Mentor, my coach, and my leader, Coach Greg White. Let's give him a round of applause.
Wow, I definitely paid Donnie $500 for that introduction. In all seriousness, right before I got up, my wife, Donna, who's the love of my life, said to me, "Be brief and be seated." So I'll certainly attempt to do that. Wow, what a crowd. When I look out and see so many friends, and I remember 30 years or so ago when I moved to Charleston, I knew no one. And I started a new basketball game at the University of Charleston. And I had a rule. You had to be an ex-college player. It started off great, and I started to meet slowly but surely all the ex-players in the area. We played on Fridays, we'd grab a little lunch, and I learned pretty quickly there were some outstanding ex-basketball players in Charleston. Also, want to say this. 3 years ago, I had dinner in Beckley, West Virginia with Tex. This event has been 3 years in the making. This is an enormous undertaking. I speak all over the country, and I don't see crowds like this very often. So Tex, my hat's off to you. The late great John Wooden, who won 10 national titles, once said, "Sports do not build character, they reveal it." I believe that is true. Where would any of us be without all of the people who came before us? The power of positive influence. We all, from all walks of life, sit here today. I want you to give some thought to all those people who encouraged you. I know I certainly had those people encouraging me. Having said that, I want to brag on my hometown of Mullens, West Virginia, very quickly. Mullens, West Virginia, a town of 5,000 people when I was growing up, tucked away in the foothills of southern West Virginia in Wyoming County. Now, Mullens, West Virginia is without question the type place you have to be going to get to. You will never get lost and end up in Mullens, West Virginia. When I think back in having grown up in Mullens and gone to grade school, junior high, and high school there were two things that were big: fishing and sports. I loved all sports, but my love was basketball. I was in junior high school. I had the opportunity to go to the Rod Thorne basketball camp. I walked into the camp, was not a very good player, but I had someone look at me and say these words: "You can do it. You can do it." And I believe it. Throughout the week of the camp, they had the various stations. Those of you that have participated in the camps understand this. The various stations. There was one station on goal setting. And the individual running the goal setting station was a basketball coach at Concord College, Ira Blankenship. And as I sat up front, he explained how to set goals. And as I listened, it really hit home. So looking back at that camp, it had an absolute true influence. Getting back to my days at Mullens, there were multiple great coaches. Now, I didn't know them all, but the legend in Mullens, where I grew up, Mullens was a lot like New York City. We know in New York City there's Manhattan, there's Staten Island, there's the Bronx. I can mention several more. Well, New York City had nothing on Mullens. Mullens had West Mullens, South Mullens, The Hill, Goose Holler, Bateman, Itman. I could go on and on and on, the little towns that were connected to Mullens. We often hear it takes a village. Mullens certainly was a village. Talking about the power of positive influence, Mullens had it. Mullens had great teachers, great administrators, great coaches, great leaders. It was a booming coal town. We had our own hotel. We had restaurants, we had retail stores, we had pharmacies, we had all sports, but the king was basketball. Our most famous native was Mike D'Antoni. Mike had an enormous influence on my career and my life. Another individual that was huge in Mullens was a guy named Jerome Anderson, Hall of Famer from WVU. Won an NBA championship with the Boston Celtics his first year, played 4 years in the league. Louis D'Antoni was the coach. Don Stover was the coach. Leonard Valentine was the coach. And then came along a bolt of lightning. That coach was Don Knuckles, my coach. Coach Knuckles had 5 state titles, 30 plus college players, 2 NBA players, and his motto was, go first class or don't go at all. We all know, for those that have coached, you're not always the most popular guy in the community. Because Coach Knuckles had this rule. It was my way or the highway. So I was really blessed to play for Coach Knuckles, and I'm so thankful. After playing at Mullens, I had the opportunity to go on and play at my alma mater, Marshall. What a great run. Looking back, great community, great fans, great teammates, great university. And I know with Brad Smith in charge, it's going to move into a whole another twilight zone. With him being the president at Marshall. Also want to touch base on my years at the University of Charleston. I watched Texas when I was coaching Pikeville College, had incredible teams. When I think of the University of Charleston, I think of Keith Tyler, Tony Gordon, Jason G. And I could go on, move games, on and on and on of the history of the University of Charleston. I sat in the Charleston Civic Center one night and observed the University of Charleston beat Marshall University, an NCAA tournament team, by 25. I know many of you shared that night with me. I was not very happy walking out. 12 years at the University of Charleston, a great school, a great president, great administrators, and I also would like to say the University of Charleston has the balance of athletics and academics where it needs to be. And lastly, I'd like to just briefly touch on my opportunity in my first coaching job to take over the University of Pikeville, which was Pikeville College back in the day. Donnie was my point guard. Obviously, Donnie's in the Hall of Fame now there, had a great career there. We inherited a 1 in 2016. 3 years later, we won 20 games. We had the nation's leading scorer who averaged 40 points a game and 15 rebounds and was drafted by the San Antonio Spurs in the 3rd round. What an amazing experience. There was no pressure. The first year, the only fans were the cheerleaders, their parents, and our players' parents. Well, we built a pretty good program. From there, I was able to make some progress. A couple of years later, I came to the University of Charleston, and then I'd like to briefly touch on coaching at UCLA. Wow, what an amazing experience. The winningest championship basketball program in the history of college basketball. Having the opportunity to join Jim Herrick, who's a Charleston native, and become part of the storied tradition. It all goes back to the power of positive influence. Looking back at that UCLA experience, I'll never forget walking on the court to coach at Kansas, walking on the court to coach at Duke, walking on the court to coach at Arizona, Louisville, Kentucky, all the Pac-12 schools, UNLV in their prime. And it didn't matter who we played, we came out on top most of the time. I've spoken tonight about the power of positive influence, and I'm going to close with this poem. A little fellow follows me. A careful man I want to be. A little fellow follows me. I do not dare to go astray for fear he'll go the same self-way. He thinks that I'm good and fine. He believes in every word of mine. Like me, he says he's going to be that little chap who follows me. I cannot escape his eyes. For whatever he sees me do, he tries. Like me, he says he's going to be that little chap who follows me. I must remember as I go through summer sun and winter snow, I am building for the years to be that little chap who follows me. Don't ever give up on a kid. That's what coaching is all about. Most powerful words in the world are "you can do it." In closing, I look back at my athletics career as a player and a coach, and two words describe it. Simply awesome. But the greatest thing, the wins, the losses, they're like a puff of smoke. They vanish into the thin air rather quickly. But what remains, and will remain forever, ever and ever, are the meaningful relationships. Thank you.